Hey y'all, my name is Jessica Robinson and I am reviewing Kylie Smith's paper. Her paper basically discussed how society influences terrorism. She says that the public opinion is the main factor that influences anti terrorism policies. Um, I thought this was a really good topic to discuss. I've never really thought into depth about this topic, and I really enjoyed learning a little bit more about it through her writing. Um, she begins her paper by saying that terrorism has evolved over time, and I think this is very important to note because terrorism can mean something different from one person to the next. Depending on maybe where they live, where they've grown up, how they were raised, the different experiences that they've had. Um, I really like how, excuse me, how she incorporated the idea that before the term terrorism was coined, we often referred to the acts that we know as terrorism to be called acts of rebellion. Um, she highlighted some of the historic events that occurred prior to the development of the word terrorism, and I thought that was very important to add. Um, she also discussed the French Revolution, which is where the word terrorism actually gained its roots and it was documented for the first time. So, this is also very important in the history of terrorism and kind of the way that it's developed over time throughout history. um, I think it was important to discuss the differences between revolutionary terrorism and repressionist terrorism, which she did. She gave a definition of the two, so she differentiated between them. Throughout her paper, she also gave examples of both of them. Um, I think I really like how she kind of made the connection between, government acts being kind of a form of terrorism. For example, like the Holocaust or different kind of genocides, where they tried to get rid of an entire population of people, whether it be because they didn't have blue eyes or, maybe their hair was curly. Um, she also made a connection between terrorism and assassinations. And I think this is important because I think a lot of people, when they think of an assassination, like the assassination of McKinley or Franz Ferdinand, they don't realize that this is, in fact, it is a form of terrorism. I just don't think we think about it like that. Her paper has lots of good history. There are lots of examples of terrorism. As I was reading, I recognized a lot of the things that we have read about throughout the semester. So she definitely did a really good job taking those readings and the things that we learned in these readings and incorporating them into her own paper. It makes her really seem that she has actually done the work this semester and actually gained something from that. So I think that is really great. It's just some suggestions. Um, First and foremost, you started off your paper with your name, your class. I think you put the professor's name and the date on it. That's fine, but I would definitely recommend making a title page separate for those. So there's a clear distinction between your title page and your actual paper itself. I think that this will make the paper seem a little bit more official or even more professional, if you will. Um, as far as some suggestions, I believe that your paper is really good for a rough draft. It contains a lot of content, but I do believe that certain areas of this paper should be elaborated on a little bit more. There were a couple instances where you used the wrong word in your sentence or you were repetitive within the sentence. I am looking at the first page, the second sentence in the third paragraph. It says, "This began mainly in feudal Europe during the early modern period." Obviously, I am sure that's supposed to mean that, or say that this began mainly in feudal Europe during the early modern day period. So just, pull that second during out of there and you're good to go. Also, on your second to last page, no, your second page, sorry, the last sentence of the last paragraph, you say, this form of terrorism was again not generally seen by negative to the groups surrounding it, as it was meant to effect change and create independent states rather than repression. The part that says, was again not generally seen by negative to the groups, you could fix this by simply replacing the word by with as, or you could even formulate your sentence a little bit differently. That's what I would recommend. It makes your sentence a little bit more complex if you put a little bit more thought into it. You could say something like, again, this form of terrorism was generally not viewed as negative by the groups surrounding it, as it was meant to prompt change and create independent states rather than developing a sense of repression. To me, that just reads a little bit better. So you'll just want to make sure as you go over your paper, you reread for things like this, look for things like this in particular so that you can, fix the simple mistake. When you're going back through and as you're reading it, I like to read it out loud. That way, if I get, tripped up on a sentence, or, maybe something isn't reading right to me, like the words aren't coming right off my tongue, I know that, maybe my sentence, I need to pull something out of my sentence. I need to add another word into it to make it flow a little better, or maybe even just flipping two words, and it can make all the difference in the world. So just make sure as you're reading it out loud, it flows very well. And so I would say that is good for that. Once or twice, I think you use the words such as we, our, or us. I know this topic pertains to us and it pertains to our country, but it is important to not use like these first person tenses. I know you're not saying like I or you or me, but in doing this, your paper comes off as informal. So definitely if you stray away from these, your paper will seem like more formal writing. Also, there are a few instances where you are missing commas or other punctuation. Again, this is just an easy mistake to fix. So to me, when I'm reading a paper or a sentence, commas are extremely important. They let me know when it's time to take a breath, so I don't get exhausted reading through a long run-on sentence. But also, more significantly, the comma to me signifies that there's going to be a new idea in the sentence, or there's going to be like an opposition to the sentence. So I know that something more is coming. So just definitely go back through and make sure you add those commas in there. It really makes all the difference, honestly. I think your conclusion, it did a really good job of rewording your thesis. It presented your main points, and it really did a good job of bringing your paper together as a whole, so that's wonderful. Again, I think this is a really, really good start to your paper. You do have good topic sentences. You just need to provide more support to back up the claims that you're making, which I think is typical for a rough draft. I think that will be what most of us lack in our papers. It's not really in depth, which is why your paper only came out to 8 pages. Mine did too. That's fine. You just need to do a little bit more research to add into there. Also, as far as the flow of your paper, I would just focus on, using more like transitional sentences so it's not so choppy. Make sure that the paragraph above the one that you're talking about flows into it. So like maybe it gives, it like leads into it. It gives maybe an introduction to the next topic that you're going to talk about. But overall, really good work. It's a good rough draft. Good luck to you.